This one involves an HOA Karen who actually called the police on me and got me banned from my own pool so her kids could use it. Let's dive into what happened. I moved into my current neighborhood about 2 years ago. I knew that HOAs have a pretty bad reputation in a lot of places, but the one here actually seemed decent. It was a quiet suburban neighborhood, far enough from the busy streets that you never heard traffic. The best part about the house? It had a pool. The previous owners had gotten permission from the HOA to build a decent-sized in-ground pool on the property, and they even built a fence around it, something I'd later understand the importance of. When I moved in, I quickly noticed that my next-door neighbor, let's just call her Karen, was a bit nosy. On nice days, she'd be outside walking around her yard, peeking over fences or even looking into nearby windows. She also had 3 kids, all of whom were full of energy. They ran around constantly, often unsupervised. I remember one time when the youngest wandered right into the street after a ball, and Karen didn't even flinch. She just stood there watching. It was rough seeing those kids without much guidance, especially knowing she was doing it all alone. Anyway, summer rolled around, and I was finally able to enjoy the pool again. One weekend afternoon, I was relaxing in the shallow end, floating around and soaking up some sun. Out of nowhere, I heard a kid scream, and suddenly Karen's kids came jumping into the pool right next to me. They were splashing and having fun while I tried to process what was going on. Looking around, I saw a trail of beach towels and uninflated pool floats leading under my fence. They had squeezed through the bottom somehow. I got out of the pool and turned to Karen, who was leaning against the fence, watching everything unfold. I asked her to get her kids out since they were trespassing. But instead of helping, Karen gave me this smug look and said something like, "You're not using the whole thing anyway." I reminded her that the pool was on my property, and I wanted them gone. That's when things took a weird turn. She claimed that as part of the HOA board, the pool belonged to the neighborhood. I told her to stop talking to me and address the kids directly, hoping they might listen better than their mom. Karen snapped and told me not to talk to her children. I said I'd be sure to bring this up with the HOA board if needed. She laughed and said, "Oh yeah? Well, guess what? You're banned from the pool now. My kids can use it without worrying about you." At that point, I got out and gathered up all the stuff her kids had left behind, which finally got them to climb out and follow me back toward the gate. I handed their things back once we reached Karen, then shut the gate behind me, hoping to end the interaction and go back to relaxing. But Karen was already on the phone, and judging by the smirk on her face, I could tell she was up to something. Sure enough, not long after, I heard police sirens heading toward my house. A cruiser pulled up, and neighbors started coming out of their homes to watch. The officers were polite and split up to take both sides of the story. I explained that the pool was on my private property and that Karen's kids had come in without permission. Karen immediately interrupted and accused me of assaulting her and her kids. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I hadn't touched anyone. Before I could even respond, Karen pushed me hard enough that my back hit the fence and then slapped me across the face. The officers quickly stepped in and pulled her away while her kids cried and screamed. Things were chaotic, and I was still trying to wrap my head around what had just happened when I saw the HOA president approaching. I felt embarrassed that he had to witness all of this, especially since I was still fairly new to the neighborhood. The HOA president, Bill, calmly stepped in and helped me get my bearings. He spoke to the officers and clarified that the community pool was actually 3 blocks away, meaning Karen had been lying about the pool being public. He also confirmed that Karen wasn't even on the HOA board and had no authority to ban me from anything. After hearing all of this, the officers arrested Karen for assault and trespassing. I decided to press charges, especially after how she involved her children and lied to the cops. Bill apologized for how long she'd been allowed to act this way and offered to help however he could. He even took Karen's kids to a neighbor's house so I could go inside and collect myself. Once I got home, I called a lawyer and started gathering documentation proving that the pool was on my property. My lawyer assured me that the case would be strong, especially with witnesses and video footage from neighbors who had recorded Karen's meltdown. Several people even knocked on my door afterward, letting me know they had footage and offering to share it with the police. Eventually, the trial wrapped up about a month ago, which is why I'm able to talk about it now. The evidence was overwhelming, and the jury didn't need more than 2 days to reach a decision. Karen tried to play the victim, giving a half-hearted apology that clearly wasn't sincere. The judge had to cut her off multiple times during questioning. After I won the case, several members of the HOA reached out to thank me. Apparently, I wasn't the only person Karen had targeted with her false threats of the HOA board. But I was the first to actually experience violence at her hands. Soon after, the neighborhood was buzzing with stories about other things Karen had done, like cutting down someone else's bushes accidentally or letting her kids wander into other people's yards. She became the talk of the neighborhood, but not in a good way. So things really started to get strange when I noticed that some of my personal items were being moved, especially the drawer on my side of the bedside table. My husband never touched that drawer, so I just knew someone else was going through our stuff. After catching a few more little signs, I finally confronted Karen about it. She immediately denied everything, but I kept it calm and told her I'd really appreciate it if she could respect our privacy and keep her hands off our belongings. That's when she completely lost it. Out of nowhere, she called 911 on me. When the cops showed up, they looked as confused as you'd expect. There wasn't any real emergency, just a tense situation. Karen tried claiming I was falsely accusing her of something serious, but I made sure to explain that I wasn't trying to get her in trouble. I just wanted some boundaries while she was staying with us. The officers gave us both a polite reminder to try and communicate better, then left. I decided not to push the issue further because I didn't want things at home to get even more awkward than they already were. Still, I kept Rich updated on what had happened. He talked to his mom, and for a little while, things seemed to improve, or at least stay quiet. But then one afternoon, I went out to my car to head to work and found one of my tires slashed. I tried convincing myself it wasn't Karen, but honestly, nothing else made sense. I stayed calm, changed the tire as fast as I could, and still ended up running a bit late. Thankfully, my boss was understanding and cut me some slack, which I really appreciated. When I got home, Karen asked how my day went. I told her that despite being late, it had gone fine. That's when she said, "You didn't get fired." It was such an odd thing to say, and that's when I became almost certain she had sabotaged my car in hopes that I'd lose my job and that Rich would eventually leave me. Her plan didn't make any sense, though, since I worked by choice, not because my husband expected me to. But it didn't stop there. Somehow, Karen figured out the password to my phone and started turning off my morning alarm to try and make me late again. Luckily for me, my body wakes up at the same time every day no matter what, and sometimes I didn't even start work until the afternoon anyway. Then came the day I got to work and my boss pulled me aside, asking about a text he said I sent him, a message that read, "I quit." I was stunned and immediately told him I hadn't sent that. But deep down, I was pretty sure I knew who had and why. My boss was kind about it and suggested I change my phone's password and keep it secure whenever possible. Later, I talked to Rich about everything, and he agreed that what his mom was doing was wrong. Still, he reminded me she had nowhere else to go and didn't want to leave her out on the streets or in a dangerous place. He promised to talk to her about getting a job, but of course, he never actually followed through. Even though she clearly wasn't listening to him, I agreed to let her stay a little longer. Although, honestly, I think most people would have cut ties already. Anyway, we decided to take a short trip to a lakeside cabin, hoping some time away might give Karen a chance to reflect, maybe even motivate her to look for a way to earn some money. The cabin was peaceful and beautiful, and we really enjoyed spending quality time together by the water, cooking just for the two of us. We hadn't gotten much time alone like that lately, so it was nice. When we got back home, we were tired from the drive, but excited to be back in our own space. That excitement quickly faded when we realized we couldn't unlock the doors with our keys. At first, it didn't make any sense. I asked Rich if there was any chance his mom had changed the locks, and he shook his head, though he didn't seem totally sure. We knocked, and Karen answered the door, refusing to acknowledge me at all. She welcomed my husband inside, acting like everything was normal. Rich asked why I wasn't allowed in, and that's when Karen responded with something absolutely shocking. Monkeys like her aren't allowed in this house, and you should really consider divorcing her. Rich was furious. He pushed past her and gestured for her to come with him, but the second I stepped inside, she completely flipped out. She started screaming uncontrollably, then pulled out her phone and called the police, ignoring Rich's pleas for her to just talk things through calmly. When the cops arrived, Karen immediately started shouting that I was trespassing. Luckily, one of the officers happened to be an old coworker of mine, and once I proved that I co-owned the house with my husband, things shifted in my favor pretty quickly. They asked Karen why she had changed the locks while we were away, which she denied, even though we clearly couldn't get in. They then turned to Rich and me to ask what we wanted to do next. As we were discussing it, Karen suddenly lunged at me with a hammer, probably the same one she used earlier to change the locks. She managed to hit my arm and left a nasty bruise, though thankfully she didn't have the strength to cause any serious harm. The officers immediately cuffed her and took her away. Afterward, Rich decided we needed to press charges because no matter how much she claimed to be family, she had crossed the line. Later, we found out she actually had a decent amount of money saved up and had lied to us the whole time. She had been taking advantage of our kindness, trying to tear our marriage apart. We felt stupid for letting her stay out of the goodness of our hearts, but in the end, she failed. Now she's facing a solid amount of jail time, all because she couldn't accept that I was married to her son. Honestly, I guess I'm lucky that my future mother-in-law doesn't seem like she'll turn out anything like Karen. Either way, I hope this experience taught her a lesson, though I doubt it. Let me know in the comments if you've ever had issues with your father or mother-in-law. You know, now that I think about it, most of these stories always seem to involve mothers-in-law and hardly ever fathers-in-law. That's kind of interesting when you really think about it. So this one happened at a Starbucks I go to pretty often. I'm a regular there, actually. The story I'm about to tell you just went down recently, and honestly, it was wild. I was sitting at a table nearby when it all started, so I got to witness most of it firsthand. A woman walked up to the counter with her drink. It was a dragon fruit iced tea with lemonade. She called over the barista and said, "Hi, sir, could you please remake this drink?" The barista, who seemed perfectly polite, asked, "Yeah, sure, what's the problem with it?" She responded with something that immediately raised red flags. It made me feel sick. "There's something wrong with your lemonade. Remake it now." The barista stayed calm and said, "Okay, no problem, ma'am," then went to remake the drink. He rinsed out the cup, lid, and straw with water before handing them back to her. But she wasn't satisfied. She looked at him and said, "Oh, it's okay. You can just use another cup and stuff. You have extras, don't you?" So he used a new cup to make the drink again and handed it back to her. This time, she took it, sat down for a bit, and seemed happy enough. I thought that was the end of it, but nope. Not long after, she came back up to the counter and called the barista over again. This time, she demanded, "Did you use the same lemonade from the first drink?" The barista replied, "Yes, ma'am. That's the lemonade we use for everyone." She didn't like that answer and said, "Can you just get the concentrate and put it in my drink instead?" He nodded and made the drink a third time, using yet another cup, exactly how she wanted it. He handed it back, and she finally seemed satisfied, walking back to her table. I figured that was the last of it, but again, I was wrong. Not too long after, she came back up to the counter and called the barista over again. I kid you not, these were her exact words. "Can you have someone else make this for me? You must be new here and making it wrong. I'm a regular, so I feel like I should be treated better than this." The barista calmly responded, "Actually, I've been here for a little over a year and I've never seen you before. If you need me to, I can make the drink again." But instead of accepting help or walking away, she completely lost it. She threw the cup at the barista, cussed him out, and stormed out of the store in a full-blown rage. I felt terrible for him. He was trying his best to be helpful, and she just kept escalating things for no reason. I got up and walked over to help him clean up the mess she left behind. That was the crazy Starbucks experience I had just lived through.